It was just crazy. And I remember I was backstage, I had like a little notebook and I was like getting ready to go out on stage and I was super nervous um, and Carrie Job was leading worship and I was waiting for her to wrap up. And so she wraps up, I hear the crowd, I get out on stage and I can't see anyone because, you know, the lights are so bright and I'm like up there and talking and feeling like I'm kind of doing a good job, but I feel woefully inadequate to be in front of this many people. And I got off stage and I remember this weird feeling of that did not feel like I thought it would feel. And it was just like kind of a disappointment. Like, oh, I thought standing in front of this many people would be awesome. And it felt really normal, you know?
Yeah.
And 90 outcries, you know, probably about 5 or 6 into them, it didn't feel all that special anymore. It felt very much like a Sunday morning to me. And I started to realize like the amount of effort I put in the small seasons of my life was like an echo of what I was going to put in the big seasons. And I think a lot of us, jump on Instagram and we see where people are at right now. And we imagine that their life is like perfect and they never have arguments with people. And I started working with them and I started realizing, oh, they're frustrated with their leaders too. I remember I had a conversation with Hillsong's team and one of their stage directors was like, the church just would not give us enough budget for our stage design this year. And they were arguing about it. And I was going, you guys argue about not getting enough money? I'm like, you're Hillsong. Like, you blow me away every time I see you. And you just start to realize like there's this kind of fantasy of perfection that we see around us that really causes us to not appreciate where we're at. And it's not real and it's not true. And the people that I've worked with that I really look up to, I work with them behind the scenes and I go, gosh, you go through so many of the same things that I go through. And I think when we start to really realize that, when that like veil kind of comes off our eyes and we realize, oh, what we see on Instagram isn't reality, even for the people that are trying to like post reality and they're trying to post the negative parts of their life, no matter what, we're just automatically going to post more highlights than lowlights. That's just the way that it's going to go.
Right.
And so we have to be able to see, and just like you said, like I love hearing the stories. There's something so freeing about hearing stories from heroes of ours of disappointments and things not going well. And you just start to realize like, oh, their life isn't perfect. And my life isn't perfect either. And you have to be able to really look at yourself in that lens. And there's just something that's so dangerous about that fantasy of perfection. And we don't just put it on ourselves. We put it on our churches. Like we look at our leaders and we're like, gosh, I wish they preached more like Stephen Furtick or, you know, Brian Houston or whoever it is that you look up to. You could go, man, he really needs to listen to this podcast I heard because that'll really blow his mind. And this sort of subtle, like, gosh, it's like a fantasy. I don't know how else to say it. Just like in a marriage, fantasy doesn't lead to anything good. In life, fantasy doesn't lead to anything good. So when we're looking at our leaders wishing they were someone else, when we're looking at our spouse wishing they were like someone else, looking at ourselves wishing like we were someone else, it's just this thing that holds us back. And in this culture of like instant gratification, we have to learn to shut down and appreciate where we're at. And I've said this